The organ music was a funeral dirge for a life not yet over. Lady Sophia Vance stood at the altar, a prisoner in white silk. In moments, she would say, "I do," to a man she despised, a man who held her family's very survival in his cold, calculating hands. Her hand, hidden in the folds of her gown, wasn't clutching a rosary. It was clutching the hilt of a small, sharp dagger. She was poised to flee, to choose public ruin over private damnation. But as the bishop spoke the final words, the great cathedral doors crashed open, revealing the one man in the world she never thought she'd see again. The Duke she had personally, ruthlessly destroyed. St. Margaret's Priory was suffocating. The air, thick with the scent of lilies and old stone, felt too heavy to breathe. Lady Sophia Vance kept her eyes fixed on the stained glass window above the altar, a depiction of a saint she didn't recognize, martyred in a swirl of painted fire. She understood him. "My daughter," the bishop intoned, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. Sophia felt a cold pressure on her arm. Lord Alistair Vane, the Earl of Rothgate, was smiling, but his grip was a manacle. "You're trembling, my dear," he murmured, his breath smelling faintly of brandy. "One would think you were nervous." He was a decade her senior, handsome in the cruel, sharp-angled way of a hawk. But his eyes, the colour of a frozen sea, held no warmth. They held only a chilling sense of acquisition. He was not marrying a woman. He was finalizing a transaction. Sophia glanced at the front pew. Her father, the Marquess of Haverford, stared at his own hands, his face a mask of grey shame. Her younger brother, Thomas, only 16, looked utterly terrified. This was for them. This ruin, this sacrifice, was to save them from the financial abyss Vane had meticulously engineered, an abyss that had only opened after the accidental death of her beloved older brother, Cedric. Vane had been their saviour. He had bought up her father's debts from a dozen shadowy creditors, consolidating them under his own name. And then he had made his price known. The Haverford lands, the Haverford name, and Sophia. "Smile, my dear," Vane whispered, his thumb digging into the delicate bones of her wrist. "Our associate from the bank, Mr. Phelps, is watching from the third pew. He is very fond of your brother Thomas. We wouldn't want him to think the partnership is in jeopardy." The veiled threat was a twist of the knife. Sophia forced the corners of her mouth to lift. The dagger she had sewn into a hidden pocket of her dress felt like a block of ice against her thigh. It wasn't for Vane. It was for her escape. Her loyal maid, Beatrice, was waiting. A small postern door, just behind the choir stalls, had been left unlatched. Beatrice had a horse, a boy's outfit, and a small pouch of coins, enough to get to the coast, to a convent in France, to anywhere. Sophia had a choice: complete this vow, and die a slow, cold death as the Countess of Rothgate, or run, bringing unimaginable scandal and financial ruin down on her family. Vane would be bankrupted by her absence. She knew he was counting on her dowry to cover his own overextended ventures, and his revenge on her father would be swift, but at least she would be free. "Do you, Alistair Vane, take this woman?" She tuned out the bishop's words. Her heart was a trapped bird, beating against her ribs. She planned her movement. When the bishop asked her to speak, she would feign faintness. In the commotion, she would stumble, move toward the choir stalls, and run. Just a few more seconds. "To be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Vane said, his voice ringing with smug triumph. "And do you, Sophia Josephine Vance?" This was it. Her breath hitched. She tensed, ready to fall. Crash. The sound was not thunder. It was the sound of the great, ancient oak doors of the priory being thrown open with such force that they slammed against the stone walls. The organ music died in a wheezing gasp. Every head in the cathedral, hundreds of society's elite, snapped around. A figure stood silhouetted against the bright afternoon light. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and radiating an authority that silenced the entire room. He took one step inside, his boots echoing like gunshots. He was no longer the laughing, carefree man she remembered. This man was harder, his face carved from stone. A small, pale scar cut through his left eyebrow, a mark she didn't recognize. But she knew him. Oh God, she knew him. It was Nathaniel Blackwood, the Duke of Ashworth, the man she had rejected, the man she had loved, the man whose heart she had ripped from his chest in a cold, calculated performance 1 year ago. He strode down the aisle, ignoring the gasps and the whispers. His eyes were not on the crowd, not on Vane. They were locked on her. Lord Vane, his face purple with rage, finally found his voice. "How dare you! This is a sacrilege! Guards, seize this man!" The Duke of Ashworth didn't even slow down. He stopped just short of the altar steps, his gaze sweeping over Sophia, taking in the terror in her eyes, the bruises on her wrist already forming where Vane held her. "Stop this wedding," Nathaniel Blackwood commanded, his voice not loud, but carrying to every corner of the priory. It cannot continue. The last time she had seen him, it had been raining, a soft, miserable drizzle in the gardens of the Cavendish estate. It was the night of the annual Cavendish ball, 1 year prior. Sophia had found Nathaniel by the ornamental fountain, his shoulders slumped. He knew something was wrong. They had been secretly meeting for months, a stolen kiss in a library, a shared dance that lasted just a little too long, a meeting of minds that was as intoxicating as any physical touch. He was the Duke of Ashworth, the most eligible bachelor in England, and he was, improbably, in love with her. He had planned to speak to her father the next day, but that was before Vane had made his move. "Nathaniel," she had said, her voice sounding strange and brittle to her own ears. Her father's tear-streaked face, Cedric's fresh grave, and Vane's cold, precise threats were all warring in her mind. "Sophia, what is it? Your father's men turned me away at the door. I had to sneak in," he had said, reaching for her. She stepped back, letting the rain chill her. You must not come to my home again." His face, so open and full of warmth, clouded with confusion. "What? Sophia, what are you saying?" "I am saying," she forced herself to meet his eyes, "that this flirtation is over. I have received an offer of marriage from Lord Rothgate." Nathaniel actually laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "Vane? That cold-blooded reptile? This is a joke." "It is no joke," she said, letting the ice seep into her words. "He is an earl. His prospects are unmatched. Your romantic notions are charming, Your Grace, but they do not pay the bills. I am my father's daughter. I must marry for security, not for this." She waved a hand between them, dismissing everything they had shared. The pain that flashed in his eyes was so potent, so raw, that it almost broke her. She had never seen him look so wounded. "I do not believe you," he whispered. "This isn't you. Vane has something on you. Tell me, Sophia. I can fight him. I have resources, I have power." "You have nothing I want," she spat, drawing on an inner cruelty she never knew she possessed. It was the only way. Vane's spies were watching. She had seen one of Vane's men, Mr. Phelps, lurking near the terrace. If she showed weakness, if she ran to Nathan, Vane would unleash his financial hounds, and, he had insinuated, her brother Thomas might meet with an accident, just as Cedric had. I want a title. I want money. I want stability, she lied. Lord Rothgate offers that. You offer poetry and long walks in the rain. I am choosing the Earl. She turned and walked away, each step a torment. She did not look back, not even when she heard him call her name, his voice breaking on the last syllable. He had left London the next week. Society papers said he had taken an impromptu diplomatic posting to Vienna, heartbroken, the gossip columns tittered, by a certain young lady with calculating eyes. Now that same man stood before her. The warmth was gone. The boy she knew had been replaced by a man she did not. I said, "Seize him!" Vane shrieked again, drawing a ceremonial sword from the sheath of a nearby guard. "This is my wedding. You have no right." "Put that away, Vane, before you hurt yourself," Nathaniel said, his voice bored. He was flanked now by two large, grim-faced men who had entered silently behind him. They were not dressed in ducal livery. They wore simple, dark suits, and they moved with the quiet confidence of men who break other men for a living. "Lady Sophia," Nathaniel said, his voice softening just a fraction as he looked at her. "I will ask you one question. Are you here of your own free will?" Sophia's throat was dry. Vane's grip on her arm was crushing. She looked at her father, who was now on his feet, his face ashen. She looked at Thomas. Vane's man, Mr. Phelps, was no longer in the third pew. He was standing near the aisle, right next to her brother. He placed a heavy hand on Thomas's shoulder. A message, clear and brutal. Sophia's blood ran cold. The escape plan, the dagger, it was all useless. Vane had anticipated everything. Sophia's voice cracked. She licked her lips. "Your Grace, you shouldn't be here. This is my choice." She saw the flicker of pain in Nathaniel's eyes, the last ember of the man she knew. He thought this was her final rejection. "I see," he said, his voice going flat. "Good," Vane sneered, lowering the sword. "Now you have your answer. Get out of this church, Blackwood, or you will be thrown out." "Oh, I am not leaving," Nathaniel said. He turned his gaze, now utterly devoid of emotion, to Vane. "And neither are you, except in chains." "What is this nonsense?" Vane blustered. Nathaniel's men stepped forward. "Lord Alistair Vane, Earl of Rothgate," the Duke of Ashworth said, his voice filling the sacred silence. "I am not here as a spurned lover. I am here as an agent of the Crown by the authority of the Home Office." He produced a folded, heavily sealed document from his coat. "I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of high treason, conspiracy to defraud the Crown, and the murder of Lord Cedric Vance." The church erupted. Sophia's world, which had been shrinking to a single point of despair, shattered. "Cedric," she whispered. Vane's face, a moment ago flush with rage, went bone white. He dropped Sophia's arm and made a dash for the postern door, her escape route. He never made it. The second of Nathaniel's men, a man built like a draft horse, clotheslined him. Vane hit the stone floor with a sickening crack. As he was hauled to his feet, his man Phelps, by the pews, drew a pistol. "No!" Thomas screamed. Before Phelps could aim, Nathaniel had moved. He crossed the chancel in 3 bounds, grabbed a heavy silver communion chalice from the altar, and hurled it. It struck Phelps in the wrist. The pistol clattered, firing harmlessly into the vaulted ceiling. The church was filled with screaming. Sophia stood frozen, her hand over her mouth. And then, as the chaos swirled around her, the adrenaline, the fear, and the sudden impossible hope became too much. The world dissolved into a ringing, black void, and Lady Sophia Vance, for the first time in her life, fainted. When Sophia awoke, the scent of lilies and old stone was gone. She was lying on a soft damask chaise lounge, and the air smelled of beeswax, old paper, and a faint trace of lavender. A fire crackled in a nearby hearth. "Beatrice, is that you?" Sophia murmured, her head pounding. "Here, my lady." Beatrice, her loyal maid, pressed a cool, damp cloth to her forehead. "Drink this. It's just water." Sophia sat up, her wedding dress feeling absurd and monstrous. They were in an unfamiliar room, a library. Dark, carved bookshelves reached the ceiling, and a heavy mahogany desk sat by the window, which overlooked a bustling London square. "Where are we? What happened?" "This is Ashworth House, my lady, the Duke's residence in Mayfair," Beatrice said, her eyes wide. "He brought you here himself. Carried you right out of the church, bold as brass, with half the ton watching." The memory came rushing back. The crash, Nathaniel, the arrest, the murder of Lord Cedric Vance. "Oh God, Cedric," Sophia whispered, the full weight of those words landing on her. "Beatrice, was it true, what he said?" "I don't know, my lady. It was chaos. The Duke's men took Lord Vane. The City Watch took that awful Mr. Phelps. Your father and Lord Thomas are here, downstairs. They're talking with the Duke." The library doors opened. Nathaniel Blackwood entered, closing them softly behind him. He had removed his heavy travelling coat and wore a simple white shirt and waistcoat. The scar over his eye seemed redder in the firelight. He looked exhausted. "Beatrice, thank you. Would you see if the kitchens can prepare some broth and tea for Lady Sophia, and then fetch her father?" "Yes, Your Grace." Beatrice curtsied and fled. They were alone. The silence was deafening, filled with the ghosts of what they had been and the horror of what had just occurred. "Nathaniel," she started. "You should drink the water," he said, his voice flat. He walked to the fireplace, not looking at her. "Your father is safe. Your brother is safe." "What you said? In the church? About my brother?" "It was all true," he said, staring into the flames. "Vane had him murdered." Sophia choked back a sob, pressing her hand to her mouth. We were told it was a riding accident. His horse threw him." "His horse was drugged," Nathaniel said, his voice tight with a cold anger. "And the stirrup leather was cut, but cut to look like it had frayed. Vane's man, Phelps, bribed a stable boy to do it. The boy confessed last week. But why? Why Cedric?" Nathaniel finally turned to look at her. His eyes were full of a terrible, weary knowledge. Because Cedric found out. He was smarter than Vane gave him credit for. He realized the family's financial misfortunes weren't misfortune at all. Vane was systematically ruining you. He was buying up your father's debts under a dozen false company names, all while advising your father on investments that were designed to fail. He was bleeding your estate dry, planning to seize it for pennies on the pound. He took a breath, his hands clenching at his sides. Cedric uncovered the truth. He confronted Vane. He told Vane he was going to the authorities. Vane arranged his accident 2 days later. Sophia felt sick. And my father. Your father was already broken by grief. When Vane, your family's trusted friend, stepped in and offered to save the estate by consolidating the debts, your father was just grateful. He never saw the viper in his own house, until Vane presented his price. "Me," Sophia whispered, the shame and sickness rising in her throat. "You," Nathaniel confirmed. And even then, your father refused. He told Vane he would rather go to debtor's prison. So Vane played his final card. He told your father that he had evidence that Cedric's death wasn't an accident. He implied that if your father didn't agree to the marriage, he would produce a witness framing your father for the murder, to collect on a life insurance policy. No, that's monstrous. It was a complete fabrication, but your father, in his grief, was terrified. He was trapped. Then Vane added the final threat. If you, Sophia, did not play your part, if you did not publicly accept him and reject all others, he would ensure young Thomas met with a similar accident as Cedric. The room spun. Sophia finally understood. The rejection in the garden, the cold, cruel words she had been forced to speak. Vane hadn't just suggested it. He had orchestrated it. He had been testing her. When I met you at the Cavendish ball, she stammered. He knew, Nathaniel finished for her. He knew you were meeting me. He had you followed. Your rejection of me was your final test, Sophia. To prove you were loyal to him. To prove you were thoroughly broken. She collapsed back onto the chaise, a terrible, shuddering sob escaping her. All this time, she had thought she was making a noble sacrifice, choosing to save her family. But she had just been a puppet, and Vane had been pulling every string. How? She asked, her voice small. How did you find out all this? I heard you. You were in Vienna. I was, he said. He walked over to a sideboard and poured 2 glasses of brandy. He handed one to her. Drink it. It's medicinal. She took it, her hand shaking so badly that the liquid sloshed. I went to Vienna to forget, he said, his voice rough. To forget you. I accepted a meaningless diplomatic assignment, hoping to lose myself in work and distance. I was not a pleasant man to be around. He took a long swallow of his own drink. One night, at a diplomatic dinner, I was introduced to a group of German investors, partners in a new shipping venture. They were discussing their London counterpart, a man of impeccable taste and ruthless efficiency. They used a code name, but then one of them, too deep in his cups, mentioned his real partner. Lord Rothgate. Vane, Sophia breathed. Vane. But what they were discussing wasn't shipping. It was arms, smuggling French weapons to rebels in Ireland, a move to destabilize the crown. It was high treason, plain and simple. And I, the heart-broken, useless Duke, was suddenly the only Englishman in the room who understood what was being said. Nathaniel's voice was low as he paced the library, the firelight catching the sharp planes of his face. I didn't go to Vienna as a spy, Sophia, but that's what I became. I pretended to be the drunken, heartbroken fool the ton already believed me to be. I let Vane's new partners, the Austrians, think I was a dissolute idiot who could be easily manipulated. They saw the Duke of Ashworth and thought they could use my name, my shipping lines, to further their own plots. Nathaniel, that was so dangerous, Sophia whispered. It was, he said, a grin set to his mouth. He unconsciously touched the scar over his eye. Vane has long arms. His associates are not gentle. I had a disagreement in a Viennese alley. They wanted to know how much I'd overheard. I learned to be more careful. He paused, collecting his thoughts. I began to feed information back to the Home Office. In secret. They couldn't believe it. Vane was too well connected. But the evidence I gathered was undeniable. We started to follow the money. And the money trail, Sophia, led to the most baffling place. Where? To your father. Or rather, to the Haverford estate. Vast sums were being funneled through shell companies, all culminating in the purchase of your family's debts. At first, the Home Office assumed your father was in on the treason. They thought Vane was using the Haverford lands, which have that perfect, hidden coastal access, as his primary smuggling point. Sophia felt faint again. They thought, Papa. It was the logical conclusion, Nathaniel said gently. But I I knew your father. I knew Cedric. And I knew you. I refused to believe it. I told the Home Office I was taking over the investigation personally. I used my ducal privilege to return to London, not as a diplomat, but as an investigator. He stopped pacing and stood in front of her. I came back, Sophia, and I had to see you. I had to know if the woman who broke my heart was a traitor or a victim. And what did you find? She asked, her voice trembling. I found a stable hand from your estate, dying of consumption in a London slum. He was the one Phelps paid to tamper with Cedric's saddle. He was terrified, convinced he was going to hell. He confessed everything. How Cedric found Vane's ledger, how Vane and Phelps planned the murder. He gave me the proof I needed, that your family was Vane's first victim, not his partner. So you knew, Sophia said, tears welling in her eyes. You knew I wasn't. I wasn't the cold, calculating woman I pretended to be. No, Nathaniel said, and his voice was so quiet it barely registered. I didn't. I truly didn't know until the very end. Sophia looked up, confused. What do you mean? The stable hand's confession cleared your father. It cleared Cedric, but it didn't clear you. For all I knew, Vane had offered you a cut, that you had chosen him, his power, and his treasonous money over me, that you were a willing participant. The rejection in the garden, it was very, very convincing. Sophia flinched, the memory of her own cruelty striking her anew. I didn't know the truth, he continued, until I arrived at the church. I had the warrant for Vane. I had my men ready to arrest him after the ceremony, to avoid a scandal. I was going to let you marry him, Sophia. I was going to let you tie yourself to a traitor, because I believed that's what you had chosen. Then, why did you stop it? I was standing at the back of the priory, watching, and I saw him grip your arm. I saw the terror in your eyes. I saw you look at your brother, and I saw Vane's man, Phelps, standing guard over him. And in that terrible second, I finally understood. It wasn't ambition. It wasn't greed. It was fear. The whole thing, the rejection, the engagement, it was all a lie, forced on you. He ran a hand through his hair, the first sign of the old, emotional Nathaniel she had seen. I didn't stop the wedding as a duke. I didn't stop it as a crown agent. I stopped it because I couldn't let him put his hands on you. The rest just happened. The library was silent, save for the crackling fire. Sophia stared at him. This man who had crossed Europe, who had infiltrated a ring of traitors, who had returned from a symbolic death, all because of a truth she had tried to hide. You believed my rejection, she whispered, the tears now flowing freely. I was so cruel. You were, he agreed, but his voice was no longer flat. It was tinged with a deep, aching sadness. You broke my heart, Sophia. The man whose heart you broke. I think he died in that alley in Vienna. The man who returned. He is just glad you are safe. He was offering her an out. He was telling her he was no longer the man who loved her. He was her savior, her protector, but not her Nathaniel. The distance between them, just a few feet of carpet, felt like an ocean. What happens now? She asked, wiping her face. Now, we clear your family's name. Vane's entire network is being rounded up. But Vane is a cornered rat, and he will be vicious. Your father's name is still tied to those fraudulent debts. The ton will not be kind. We have a new fight on our hands. Just then, the door opened, and her father, the Marquess, entered. He looked 10 years older, but the shame was gone, replaced by a dazed gratitude. Sophia, he said, his voice thick. He stumbled toward her and fell to his knees, taking her hands. Can Can you ever forgive me?" Sophia pulled her father up, holding him as he wept. "There is nothing to forgive, Papa. We were all his victims." She looked over her father's shoulder at the Duke of Ashworth, who was watching them with a guarded, unreadable expression. Her family was safe. But she realized with a cold pit in her stomach, was ruined. The trial of Alistair Vane, Earl of Rothgate, was the only thing anyone in London could speak of. It was a delicious, horrifying scandal, and at the centre of it was Lady Sophia Vance. She was no longer the tragic bride, but the tainted Marchioness-in-waiting. The ton, high society, had turned on her with the ferocity of a pack of wolves. The facts, as the gossip columns reported, were damning. She had been engaged to a known traitor. Her family was bankrupt. Her name was synonymous with disgrace. She was, in short, a social pariah. Nathaniel, true to his word, stood by her. But his presence only added fuel to the fire. He was the Duke of Ashworth, a hero of the crown, and he was inexplicably seen escorting the disgraced lady to and from the solicitor's offices. "He's obsessed," whispered the ladies behind their fans at a ball Sophia had not been invited to. She must have some dark hold over him. The chief proponent of this theory was Lady Montague, a society dragon whose own daughter, the blandly pretty Lady Isabella, had been intended for the Duke. Lady Montague saw Sophia not as a victim, but as a rival, who had, by some witchcraft, stolen the prize. "She was in on it, I tell you," Lady Montague declared at a high society tea. She and her father were partners with Vane, and now that he's been caught, she's latched onto the Duke to save her own skin. Mark my words, she'll drag him down with her. The rumours became so poisonous that they began to affect the trial. Vane, fighting for his life, seized on them. His defence was that he was not a traitor, but a patriot who had been framed by the Haverford family and their new protector, the Duke of Ashworth, who wanted the Haverford lands for himself. It was a preposterous lie, but it muddied the waters. Sophia felt the noose tightening. She was free from Vane, but she was more trapped than ever. She was now a liability, a stain on the one man who had saved her. She found him on a grey, drizzling afternoon in the place they used to meet, Hyde Park. He was standing by the Serpentine, skipping stones across the water. "Nathaniel," she said, coming up behind him. He didn't turn. "You should not be here alone, Sophia. It's not safe. I am not afraid of Vane's associates. I am afraid of this." She motioned to the carriages rolling by on the lane, the occupants of which pointedly turned their heads away from her. "I am afraid of what I am doing to you." He finally turned. He looked tired. "I do not care for the whispers of Lady Montague." "But you must," Sophia insisted, her voice cracking with desperation. "She is poisoning the well. Your friends at the Home Office are beginning to doubt you. They think your attachment to me is clouding your judgment. You are the Duke of Ashworth. You cannot be seen with me. So you would have me abandon you? Now? When Vane is using your name to build his defence? You have done more than enough," she said, tears blurring her vision. "My family is safe from him. My father's finances, with your help, are being untangled. You have given me my life back. Do not let me take yours. I release you from any perceived duty. I will go to the country. I will disappear. But you must not let my shame taint you." "Taint me," he repeated, his voice dangerously low. He took a step closer, the rain starting to plaster his white shirt to his shoulders. "Do you think I have endured the last year? The lies, the spies, the filth, only to be concerned that Lady Montague will strike my name from her guest list?" "That is not what I mean," she cried. I ruined you once with my lies. I will not do it again with my shame." "Damn your shame, Sophia!" he roared, the sudden blast of emotion shocking her into silence. "And damn my duty! Do you think this has been duty?" He grabbed her arm, just as Vane had. But the grip was not a manacle. It was an anchor. "The man who returned from Vienna. I told you he was not the man who left. I told you he was cold, that he was just glad you were safe." "He was," she whispered. "He is." "He is a liar," Nathaniel breathed, his eyes, dark with a year's worth of pain, searching hers. He has been lying to himself. He tried to be the stoic investigator, the dutiful duke. But seeing you day after day, so brave and so broken, watching you endure this. "Sophia, He didn't finish the sentence. He crushed his mouth to hers. It was not the sweet, hesitant kiss of their youth. It was not the kiss of poetry and gardens. It was a desperate, angry, and profoundly loving kiss. It was the rain, and the wind, and the year of pain, and the terror of the church, all rolled into one. It was a kiss that said, "I am ruined, and I do not care." He pulled back, his forehead resting against hers, both of them breathing heavily. The rain dripped from his hair onto her face. "So you see," he whispered, his voice rough, "we are in this together, whether you like it or not. Your ruin is my ruin, and I will not let them win." A carriage had stopped on the lane. Inside, staring at them with eyes wide with shocked delight, was Lady Montague. She had just been given the weapon she needed to destroy them both. "Oh dear," Sophia murmured as the carriage sped away. Nathaniel sighed, pulling her close. "Yes. Oh dear." Lady Montague's eyewitness account of the scandalous public embrace in Hyde Park was a wildfire. Within hours, all of London knew. The Duke of Ashworth had been compromised. He was not a dispassionate agent of the Crown. He was a fool in love, blinded by a manipulative woman. The Crown itself was not pleased. Nathaniel was summoned by the Home Secretary, a man named Lord Sturridge, who had been his mentor. He returned to Ashworth House hours later, his face grim. "They are removing me from the case," he told Sophia and her father. "What?" Sophia was horrified. "But you are the only one who knows the truth. They believe my objectivity is gone. They will still use my evidence, but I am no longer permitted to direct the prosecution. They are assigning a new man, a neutral party." "This is Vane's doing," the Marquis said, pacing the library. "He has allies everywhere." "It's worse than that," Nathaniel said. He held up a newly printed news sheet. "Vane has played his last card." From his cell in the tower, Vane had issued a full confession. It was a masterpiece of deceit. In it, he admitted his guilt. But he claimed he was not the ringleader. He claimed he was a simple, misguided patriot, blackmailed into the arms-smuggling plot by a far more cunning, far more dangerous traitor, the Marquess of Haverford. "Papa?" Sophia read the sheet, her blood turning to ice. "He claims," Nathaniel read, "that your father, resentful of the Crown after his financial ruin, which Vane now claimed he tried to prevent, masterminded the whole thing. He claims your father used me to get to the Austrians and used his own daughter, Sophia, to entertain Vane and keep him quiet." Sophia felt so violated she thought she might be sick. "It's a lie," her father whispered, sinking into a chair. "It's all a damnable lie." "Of course it is," Nathaniel said. "But it's a plausible lie. And Vane has offered to produce his final piece of proof in exchange for his life. His private ledger. The one, he claims, that details every payment he ever made to your father." "But that ledger doesn't exist," Sophia cried. "Oh, it exists," Nathaniel said, his eyes narrowing. "It has to. It's the one thing he's been protecting this whole time. The one thing that truly implicates him and his real partners. He's not offering the real ledger. He's offering a fake. One he's had prepared just for this. A forgery that will hang your father and, he hopes, discredit me, allowing his true, powerful partners to walk free." A new warrant was issued. That evening, agents of the Crown, led not by Nathaniel, but by a stern-faced rival, arrested the Marquis of Haverford. Sophia was alone in Ashworth House, save for the servants. Nathaniel had been forbidden from contacting her. The trial was in 2 days. Her father was in the Tower, and she was, for all intents and purposes, under house arrest. She was back in a cage. She spent the night pacing the library, the same room she had woken in after the wedding. She was trying to think. Vane's lie was perfect. Almost. His private ledger. Why would he have one ledger to frame her father, and another, real one? Because the real one implicated someone else. She thought back. Vane, his arrogance, his smugness. He was not a man to destroy evidence. He was a man to gloat over it. She remembered something from the church, a fleeting comment. Vane's man, Phelps, was not his only associate in the pews. "Our associate from the bank, a Mr. Phelps," Vane had said. But there was another. "He claims that details every payment he ever made." Vane was arrogant. He kept records. Where would a man like Vane hide his deepest, darkest secrets? Sophia's eyes landed on the mantel. A small, exquisite music box sat there, a gift from Nathaniel's travels. She opened it. A tiny ballerina twirled, a simple, predictable mechanism. Vane was not simple. He was complex. He was deceitful. Number 17, Grosvenor Square. It was Vane's London residence, the one place that had been sealed by the Crown, the one place Nathaniel was now forbidden from going. But she wasn't. She summoned Beatrice. "Fetch my darkest cloak," Sophia said, her voice shaking but resolute, "and find me a crowbar." The back entrance to number 17, Grosvenor Square, was easy to bypass. The Crown seal was just a wax stamp and a single board guard out front. Beatrice, who had grown up in the slums of St. Giles, picked the lock on the servants' entrance in under a minute. "Beatrice, you are a marvel," Sophia whispered. "My pa was a locksmith, my lady." "Till he got caught," Beatrice whispered back. "Where are we going?" "His private study. I was there once to sign the marriage contracts." The house was cold and dead, the furniture shrouded in white cloths like ghosts. Sophia led the way, climbing the grand staircase, her crowbar held like a weapon. Vane's study was just as she remembered, dark, oppressive, and smelling of leather and Vane's ever-present brandy. It had been searched, of course. The Home Office wasn't stupid. Desks had been emptied, drawers left ajar. They had found nothing. "Because they were looking for a book," Sophia murmured, thinking aloud. "They were looking for a ledger. But Vane is too vain for that." She scanned the room. Her eyes landed on a large, ornate portrait of Vane himself, depicting him as a Roman senator. It was monstrously arrogant. He would hide it somewhere he could see it every day, Sophia said. She walked to the fireplace. A heavy, gilded mirror hung above it. "My lady, what are you?" Sophia didn't answer. She wedged the crowbar between the mirror and the wall and pulled. With a groan of splintering wood, the mirror ripped away from the wall, crashing to the floor. Behind it was a small wall safe. "Beatrice, your father's—" "Skills," Sophia said, her heart pounding. Beatrice looked at the complex lock. "That ain't no simple pick, my lady. That's a Chamberlain 4-tumbler. I don't know if I can." "Try," Sophia commanded. Beatrice worked, her small tools clicking and probing. The silence of the house was deafening. Minutes stretched into an eternity. "I can't—" "Wait," Beatrice said. "I felt it. The third tumbler. It stuck." "Let me," Sophia said. She took the metal probe. "You said you met Vane. He gave you a gift once. A box of poems." "No," Sophia whispered, her eyes widening. "It wasn't a box of poems. It was a music box. From a mutual friend. He said it was from a Mr. Chamberlain, the same name as the lock." She had never opened it. She had found it frivolous, and, coming from him, tainted. It was in her rooms at Haverford, locked in a drawer. "No, wait. A gift from a Mr. Chamberlain." It wasn't a name. It was a clue, the combination. She remembered the box. It played a tune from a popular opera, The Marriage of Figaro. She had hummed the first few notes, 4 notes. "Move aside," Sophia said. She knelt. She didn't try to pick the lock. She turned the dial. 4 clicks to the left, the first note. 7 clicks to the right, the second note. 2 clicks left, the third. 9 clicks right, the fourth. She pulled the handle. The safe opened. It was not full of gold. It contained only one slim, leather-bound book. It was not a ledger at all. It was a private diary. Sophia opened it. Vane's precise, cruel handwriting filled the page. October 17th. "The Haverford girl is mine. The father is broken. The price was steep, but the lands will pay for themselves. The coast is secure." October 28th. "That fool Blackwood is sniffing around. I have sent word to my partners in Vienna. A disagreement should cool his ardor." November 5th. "Cedric Vance is dead. Phelps is a brute, but efficient. It was a necessary, if messy, expense." Sophia's hands were shaking. This was it. This was the real book. She flipped to the back. A list of names, payments, dates. And there, at the very top, was the real conspiracy. It wasn't her father. It wasn't just Vane. L. Montague, partner, £50,000 to secure the silence of his wife and the cooperation of Lord Sturridge. "Lord Sturridge," Sophia breathed. "The Home Secretary, Nathaniel's mentor." And L. Montague. Lord Montague, the husband of Lady Montague, the woman who had been slandering her. Sophia finally understood. Lady Montague wasn't just a jealous society dragon. She was a distraction. She was scandalized by Sophia to throw suspicion of her own husband, who was Vane's primary partner in treason. Lord Sturridge, the man who had just taken Nathaniel off the case, was in their pocket. "My lady," Beatrice said, her voice shaking. "I hear something. Downstairs." Footsteps, heavy, coming up the stairs. "They knew we'd come," Sophia said. She shoved the ledger into the bodice of her dress. "The back way, now." They ran. The trial was a foregone conclusion. The Marquess of Haverford stood in the dock, his face pale. Lord Sturridge sat with the prosecutors. Lady Montague sat in the front row, a smirk on her face. The prosecution was presenting Vane's confession. "And do you, Lord Vane," the prosecutor asked, "swear that this forged ledger you have presented, implicating the Marquess of Haverford, is the truth?" "I do," Vane said, looking pious. "I have made my peace with God. I only wish to see justice done." "Objection!" The voice came from the back. The doors of the courtroom crashed open. Sophia Vance stood there, her hair unbound, her dress muddy. She was flanked by 2 men, her brother, Thomas, and, standing beside her, looking like thunder, the Duke of Ashworth. "You are not permitted here, Your Grace," Lord Sturridge bellowed, his face turning purple. "I am not here as a duke," Nathaniel said, striding down the aisle. "I am here as a witness." "This is irregular," the judge protested. "And this," Sophia said, stepping forward, "is evidence." She threw the real ledger onto the prosecutor's table. "This is Lord Vane's private diary. Not a forgery, but the original. I believe you will find it illuminating." The courtroom descended into chaos. The prosecutor opened the book. His face went white. He looked at Lord Sturridge. He looked at Lord Vane. Vane, seeing the book, lunged. He tried to grab it, to throw it into a fireplace, to destroy it. But Nathaniel was faster. He slammed Vane back into his seat with one hand. "Read it," Nathaniel commanded the prosecutor. It details the murder of Cedric Vance by Vane and Phelps," the prosecutor stammered. And a conspiracy." "A conspiracy," Sophia said, her voice ringing out, "between Lord Vane, Lord Montague, and the Home Secretary, Lord Sturridge, who was paid £50,000 to silence the investigation." Lady Montague screamed. Lord Sturridge made a run for the door, but Nathaniel's men, the two grim-faced agents from the church, were there to block his path. The trial was over. Vane's confession was void. Sophia's father was freed, his name not just cleared, but celebrated. Lord Sturridge and Lord Montague were arrested. Vane, his last gamble failed, was sentenced to hang. Weeks later, the dust had settled. The Haverford name was restored, though their finances were modest. The Tun, in a stunning reversal, now hailed Sophia as a heroine. Lady Montague was in social exile, her husband awaiting trial. Sophia stood in a small, sunlit chapel. Not St. Margaret's Priory. This was the private family chapel at Ashworth, Nathaniel's country estate. There were only a dozen guests. Her father, his colour returned. Her brother, Thomas, who now stood tall. Beatrice, her maid of honour. Sophia wore a simple cream dress. Her hair was down. She walked the short aisle, her eyes only on the man waiting for her. Nathaniel Blackwood. He wore no formal ducal robes. He was just Nathaniel. The scar over his eye was now a faint white line. The hardness was gone, replaced by a smile that reached his eyes. They stood before the vicar. "Are you doing this of your own free will, Sophia?" Nathaniel whispered, his voice full of a teasing warmth she thought she had lost forever. She took his hands. They were warm. They were strong. "More than anything in this world," she whispered back. "Good," he said, and he turned to the vicar. "Then you may begin." The doors of the chapel were open, and sunlight streamed in. And so, the cage was broken. The lies were unveiled. Sophia and Nathaniel, who had been torn apart by a traitor's scheme, were finally united. Not by duty, not by scandal, but by a love that had been tested in the fires of treason and betrayal, and had come out stronger. They had faced down the whispers of society, the corruption of power, and the ghosts of their past, all to find their way back to each other. Their grand wedding had been a prison, but their simple ceremony was a liberation. Justice was served, not just for the villains like Lord Vane and Lady Montague, but for the heroes who had to lose everything to find out what truly mattered. Thank you for listening to this story. If you were on the edge of your seat, please don't forget to like this video. It truly helps our channel grow. And if you love stories of romance, drama, and karmic justice, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss a single chapter. And we all love to share a good story, so please share this video with someone who needs a reminder that true love will always find a way.